That was bad. Generally, that's the cue, to clap for somebody. Yeah! We're going to have fun tonight. I was just back in the green room back there. It's real nice. If you've ever been back there. Talking to all the presenters this evening. They all seemed to know each other. They were laughing, telling jokes. That's going to fit right in here tonight. We got lots of jokes. One person. Thank you. Thank you. Whew, I'm a little out of breath, to be honest with you. New Year's resolution didn't really stick all that well. Welcome to RTP180. Who knows what next month is? March. Yes, it is. You, sir, you work at a research station, don't you? Love it. Next month is the best of RTP180. Not that tonight's not going to be best of. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. But next month is 4 years of doing RTP180. 4 years. And I've done every single one of them. It's so much fun. I look forward to the third Thursday every single month. Who's here for the first time? First timers. Wow. Retention is terrible. Thank you all for showing up. How about stand up real quick? Just stand up. First timers, stand up. Look at each other. That's great. Get to know one another. I need 5. I need 5 volunteers. No, don't sit down. No! Woo! I need 5 quick little volunteers. If you want 5 people, come up here, please. Real quick. We got to do this quick. And she doesn't look like she's volunteered. Just 5 volunteers. You flew in all the way just for this? Bless your heart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, we got 5. All right, so we do a little initiation every month. And this hit me on the drive over here. And virtual reality, this doesn't quite go along with it, but it is around a video game, which could, I guess, sometimes be virtual reality. I want to see who can get the furthest humming the Super Mario Brothers theme song. You're out? What? She said I'm out. Okay, well, hey, you're just going to have to try. It starts with doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. No? Okay. All right, you're out. All right. You, sir, do you know it at all?
So I start from where you left off?
You can just start. Just see how long you can get.
All right. Do 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 do. All right, that's about as far as I can.
That's pretty good.
I'm certain I can't get further than him. But do 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 boop 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 do 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 do. See, that's all I would have known, and I forgot what he did.
Hey, that's fine. That's fine. You're in the lead so far, I think.
Do 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 do
All right, Sam.
So I'm a Sonic person. And any Sonic Genesis people? Sonic? No, yeah, woo! Okay.
Don't need to start a rivalry war here. Keep it civil.
All right. I'm not gonna get anywhere as far as y'all, but all right. Do 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 do. Yeah, that's it.
do 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 do.
Hold on, now you stay up here. You come on over here. I got to show you something. Now, if you haven't seen these amazing T-shirts, they're brand new. And they say RTP180 on the front, and then they give a complete tour schedule on the back. But we're not giving them out till next month. So unless I can get a thumbs up from somebody to give you this, not from you guys, from somebody that actually has some clout, you, sir, get a T-shirt. And we have different sizes That's an XL because I was going to take it for myself. But if you need like a large or something, just let them know. Okay, that was fun. All right, now I gotta breeze through this. Welcome to RTP 180. For those of you who've not been here before, thank you for participating for one, and thank you for coming this evening. I will be your MC tonight. My name is Will Hardison, and you are sitting in the Frontier building. You have a question? When was that picture taken? A long time ago. That was hurtful, what he said last time. If you weren't here, basically, we won't even go into that. I would tell you about the building and what you're sitting in, but I'd rather show you with a video. Yeah. Nicely done. I gotta give a shout out to Ryan in the back, guy that works with me that did that video, worked really hard on it. So super awesome. Come by anytime during the workday and just plop down in the first floor. It is wide open and it is free for co-working. So we'd love to see you guys in here during the day working. All right, tonight presenters get 5 minutes. I'm Triangle Girl this evening. I will ding at the 5-minute mark. They've all been instructed to finish up if they've got a point or two left. They don't have to stop right at 5 minutes. Then we'll open it up for a couple of questions afterwards. And this evening, we'd love for you to be social online using the hashtag RTP180. You can follow at the RTP and start tweeting this evening and follow along. I sometimes tweet some jokes during the evening, so pull out your phone, start tweeting. And of course, throw away your trash. They are gracious to let us use the space this evening, so let's just leave it how we found it. And everyone can hear you. Basically, just tweet to one another instead of talking to each other or text them. This room is what I call a very hot room. There's basically a cement floor, no ceiling, so if you're on the side or in the back, just please be very respectful to the presenters up here. They are sharing their passions and what they do for a living, so the most that you can do is give them 5 to 6 minutes of undivided attention. That would be fantastic. And with that, I will bring up the dynamic duo. Okay, that's fine. It's what it says here in your bios. Jason McWigan and Jason Cooper are the creative director and director of multimedia at Horizon Productions, which has over 35 years of consumer marketing experience that they are now translating into virtual reality products. Jason and Jason lead a talented team that has developed VR projects for a wide array of clientele, including IBM, Quintiles, Cree, Home Depot, Scott's, Carolina Railhawks, UNC, and Duke Athletics. The dynamic duo doing some name dropping. Bring up Jason and Jason. I got another mic for you. Yes. Who wants the clicker? There you go.
I got 2 things. You gotta make sure I don't stick the pointer in my mouth and the mic at the screen. 'Screen. Okay, let's get started. All right, so we are talking about creating virtual reality. So thanks to Mike Koalis for suggesting that we go first and throwing us under the bus, essentially. We're going first to basically tell you a little bit about it and find out a little bit more about what you guys know. Quick show of hands, who actually has tried virtual reality? All right, good amount of people, great, okay, fantastic. All right, so let's jump right in. We got 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
All right, so we're going to start with monoscopic 360. Monoscopic 360. Whoa.
All right. You stay over there, I'll stay over here.
All right, monoscopic 360. Essentially, we're talking about 2D flat 360 video. Okay? There are a number of devices that you can use to capture monoscopic video. We've got a few here. You got the Samsung Gear 360, the Kodak SP4Ks, and then on up to multi GoPro rig, 6 camera, 10 camera, and eventually you take the footage from, say, the 2 cameras here, and stitch them together where they overlap to create a single flat 3D or 360 video.
And it is one of the most popular types of VR content you're going to find out there right now, simply because it can be shared on YouTube and Facebook. It is relatively easy to create on the lower end with the smaller devices where you have simply 2 cameras. When you start to grow into larger scale rigs where you have maybe 6, 10, 16 cameras, you're going to have a lot more to stitch together, and anyone that has actually produced this content can tell you it is extremely time consuming and tedious to put all that imagery together across 30 frames per second for however long you're actually shooting the content. I think we're going to jump right into stereoscopic, which is our preferred. So stereo 360 video is actually going to be similar in nature, but it's actually going to have true depth. The reason it has true depth in the variance between monoscopic and 360 and 3D stereoscopic is that you're showing different images. Where's our slide? Click. There you go. Hey. You're showing different images, one for each of your eyes. Your left eye sees something slightly different than your right eye, and your brain actually creates the convergence to actually give true depth. Now, the big difference between those two is when you're viewing the monoscopic, it's going to feel like something's just painted around you on a sphere, but the 3D aspect is actually going to give you a little bit more of a sense of presence that you're feeling like you're standing right there.
3D 360 video is incredibly hard to stitch. We've been very fortunate. We've got Google's Jump camera here, the GoPro Odyssey. This is a 16 camera rig. We shoot with all 16 cameras, and the very fortunate part is we upload all the footage to Google's Jump platform, and they actually do all the stitching and rendering through an algorithm in the cloud. That took a process that used to take months and cut it down into a number of days. And this is actually one of the few on the entire East Coast right now.
Yeah, we're happy to share that with you guys later on if you want to take a look at what actually goes on the inside. It's actually a pretty cool piece of technology. Click.
We're going to
say click. Click. Here. Okay.
All right. So last Thursday, we actually shot the Duke Carolina game. So if you're in the headset, you're on the court.
And this piece of footage is actually taken from directly in the headset. Someone's spinning around in a chair looking at all this. But this is the stitch footage we got back about 24 hours after we were at the game.
All right.
So the last form of VR that we're going to talk about producing is in-engine VR. And in-engine VR can be done in a couple of different ways. Click. Oh, I'm back. You're going to use game engine like Unreal or Unity to actually create content to either show in real time or use pre-produced pieces then to create interactivity with. There's going to be a couple of different ways you're going to be displaying this. You could display it in one of the mobile headsets, and this goes for all VR content, in one of the mobile headsets like the Gear VR that we have right here, or one of the higher end ones like the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift. Those are actually going to give you a little bit more of ability to move around in a space. You'll get location aspects of where the viewer is, so you can actually traverse them through different areas. Whereas if you're viewing things, we passed by. If you're viewing things from within the mobile headset, you're going to be locked in a fixed position.
Yeah. We're very fortunate here in the Triangle. We've got Epic Games, who builds the Unreal Engine, one of the most popular platforms. Also a number of AAA developers, Red Storm, Insomniac, and Epic themselves. And the general premise around building stuff like this is
You don't have to start from scratch. A company like us who's been doing 3D work for a long time, you're just pulling in those 3D assets into the game engines and then essentially making the person a camera within the scene.
And we have had great success as well with basically taking content that has been created and creating linear-based 3D assets, 3D content. So you can, instead of going through one of the camera systems, create 3D movies that are translated into VR. We've got some great examples of that we could share with you guys later on as well.
Yeah, this is a neat GIF right here. It's building VR within VR, which Unreal Engine allows you to do.
And we understand that's a lot to kind of get in there, and you can go on for days about any one of these individual topics, but that's essentially your 5-minute overview on how you create virtual reality content.
Yep.
I had no idea where to point this thing.
You'd think somebody would tell you that. I told him that in the back. Questions. That's perfect. I don't have to go anywhere.
So this might be very basic, but how does this technology relate to what we've seen on, I've seen it on iPhones, like the panoramic video. How does that stitching work in comparison to the stitching that these videos require?
That's actually an excellent question. The essential nature of what you're actually getting out of the YouTube panorama or things that you're seeing is very, very similar. The stitching process, creating that seamless image, works the same way. You can create those panoramas either with just regular video or with still images. But when you're displaying it, it just depends on the display mechanism. You could take that phone or you could take that device and hit a button on the YouTube app and actually create a split screen and then put that into a cardboard viewer and actually see that exact same asset in VR, essentially. The content creation is similar in nature for video assets, but when you start going into the interactive, it's going to take a couple of jumps forward.
Time for one more.
I'm wondering about the cameras, especially for let's say you hiking and it's constantly shaking, but is there any kind of a version of the VR that just block the shaking moments, but just give a real video of just blocking the shaking?
So as far as like stabilization of the camera system?
Yeah.
So typically with VR, and one of the things you'll notice is that typically you'll want to try and avoid too much motion with the actual camera rig itself, simply because you want to avoid motion sickness when someone puts a VR headset on. So we do something to avoid that, essentially when we're doing that, we either keep the camera stationary or we move in very specific slow-moving vectors. We move in one specific direction, either straight forward, straight back, or we move straight to the left or straight to the right. Typically the one that is seen as the least sensitive to motion sickness is moving slowly straight forward or backwards. But typically we will leave it stationary. As far as the stabilization, typically we don't move the camera that much. We learned early on, Coop could actually tell you our story about UNC real quick.
Yeah, one of the early 360 videos we shot, we ran out with UNC's football team out of the tunnel, so you could put on the headset and get that experience. And that was with the 6-camera GoPro rig. And the problem with that is the bouncing and the stabilization, but also the 6 cameras aren't fully synced together down to the frame, and was one of the impetuses for how we wanted to really get in with Google, because the 16-camera rig is fully synced, and they took care of that issue, which is a huge issue for stitching. So.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Awesome. Next up, we have Derek Ham. He is the Assistant Professor of Graphic Design and Affiliate Research Professor of Architecture of North Carolina State's College of Design. In his work, he is developing a new language for the design and criticism of virtual reality experiences and teaching students new methods of VR design and development based on, you had to put spatial in here, didn't you? And computational thinking. You are next. Yeah, now I got to read that bio all over again. We switched it up backstage. I voted against it, to be honest with you. This is what happens. Koalas. You gotta watch them. All right, next stop, we have Mike Koalas. He is a creative director and producer. I was wondering why people were going, hey man, with a passion for art, design, and technology. He has spent the majority of his career working with creatives, empowering faculty, and producing innovative multimedia content for online education. In 2015, Mike launched Lever Studios LLC, a startup focused on exploring a broad range of applications for 360-degree video production and virtual reality. Not Derek Cam. Please help me welcome Mike. Woo, that was bad. Woo, Mike. It's all right. Hey, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
That's right. All right. Just throw that thing away. This thing doesn't. It doesn't. It kind of works. All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Yeah. So for the past few years, as was stated, really been focused on 360 video and what's known as cinematic VR, and it's been an incredible personal and professional journey. Kind of fell into it, maybe strategically, maybe deliberately, but it has afforded me some amazing opportunities. I've been on a submarine, I've been in a race car, helped film a documentary film about a artist, downtown Raleigh artist, escaped a zombie apocalypse in downtown Raleigh as well. That was kind of a nightmare, get it? That experience has been really incredible. And besides this really cool technology that we just saw from Jason, awesome toys, love the toys. One of the big factors that has been a draw has been the people. And I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing creative talent over the past several years. This is one of the visionaries, Derek Allen Rowe, who couldn't be here tonight, but he's a big part of the project, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute. Derek goes around the country filming national parks in 360 under a project called Wild Eyes. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it already. That's the big draw for me, is really the people aspect and all the great connections that I've made over the past several years. Maybe this will go forwards. Come on, buddy. Oh, no. Thank you. So Derek and I have done some cool projects together, and he calls me up one day and says, hey, I got an idea. What if we put one of these 360 cameras in a bug tank? I said, I have never done that, and I don't know how to do that. Let's do it. So we pulled together some of our friends and pulled together some of these entities, and we descended on the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, who happen to have lots and lots of bugs and a giant audience that was about to happen for Bug Fest last year. And, I'm sorry. Okay. So our idea was simple. We wanted to give our audience a perspective that was otherwise impossible to achieve without the use of virtual reality technology. That's what we set out to do. We didn't know if we were going to be successful. And one of the things that is important to know about VR is when you are in virtual reality, it often evokes a very strong emotional response and or sense of presence. This, now looking at it, was a bad idea. But that was what was in our head. And so we set out to make this thing happen. And the way we pulled this off, pretty much, we used a very modified GoPro camera rig with lenses that can be adjusted to capture near macro photography. Also spatial audio, which we wound up not using because that just put it so far over the edge of creepy. Bad idea. We hadn't really done this before. We just gave it our best shot. And we really just didn't know what we were doing. So there, full disclosure. And when we were filming on site, we were able to see kind of a preview of what was happening on our cell phones. But it wasn't until we got this footage in the headset that we realized what we had done, what we had come up with, something that was so unique and so different. And we weren't really worried about not knowing what we were doing because we were surrounded by people who really wanted to explore and experiment and innovate, and that's what carried this project through. So what happened? Grasshoppers grew to the size of a school bus. The tarantula thing was just, again, bad idea. Stick bug was no less scary than seeing a dragon in real life. The outcome was beyond what we could have imagined, and we were there filming this thing, but our brains could not process what it was going to feel like when we put it on our heads. Neither did the 300 plus people who attended Bugfest. So with the help of a ton of National Sciences Museum staff, a couple of them are here tonight, I think, Arthur Ernest, one of my coworkers, and Derek Rowe in the back there, we were able to give over 300 people a very, very unique experience that hopefully was unforgettable, and in some cases, some very angry moms yelled at me for making them sit through that. Yay. So why VR? Yes, we can transport you to far off, awesome, imagined places. The potential is amazing there, but one of the most important aspects for me in VR is that we can give you an experience that is meaningful and will incite some level of conversation, a deeper level of conversation. It will hopefully evoke a idea or a spark that essentially encourages you to go out and explore the world around you, right? That's the power, that's the beauty, that's what we're chasing. We're chasing that experience to encourage you to go out and do. Thank you.
All right. Questions? Yes, sir. Anybody else? Just so I can. Nope. Okay.
That was Derek.
So is anybody looking at using this? Hey, hello, hi, over here, the guy who likes Sonic. So is anybody exploring the use of this to kind of help people with phobias? Like, because I mean, just assume if that spider phobia there, if you happen to have that would be a safe way.
What do you mean by help?
I mean, desensitization
Oh,
therapy,
right, that way.
Stuff.
Well, personally, no, but I know a guy who made a really awesome game called Phobie, which is the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So that's definitely doable. But no, I have seen articles, again, I don't know anybody personally, but I have seen articles and studies, and some universities are delving pretty deep into exposure therapy, essentially. So you don't hit them with the tarantula up front. You don't do that. We did that. It was a bad scene. You gradually introduce them to the edge of a building or different types of things. I can't point to an exact resource, but yes, I know it's being done.
One more. Go once. But I know you've already asked one. I just want to make sure you're good.
Do it.
Bugfest was one great example, but how do you see education and virtual reality working together in the future, especially because there's been so many conversations about school being partially online and things like that? What have you seen that's really sparked you? I don't know.
So I've worked at NC State for 15 years, and for the duration of my career there, we have essentially chased the holy grail of online education, which is experiential learning. How do we put our learners and our students inside of these environments, inside these situations? We've done animation, we've done video, we've done a great job with a lot of different medium. This is the next medium to explore, and in my honest opinion, I believe VR I should say education is one of the best targets for this medium because of the sense of presence, because of the sense of experience, because of a range of applications that exist that can essentially take a deeper dive into a subject matter. I can give you some questions about education, I can give you some questions about a subject matter, and then I can put you in that situation and have you experience that yourself. So I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think it's going to ramp up very, very fast and very rapidly.
All right. Thank you, sir. You ready? It's your turn now. I'm sorry that I psyched you out the first time. But we do, since I already read the bio, we'll just bring Derek up and we'll tell a joke. Is that okay if I tell a joke real quick? Okay. All right. What do you call a bunch of rabbits hopping backwards? You got to follow that. A receding hairline. I got a haircut today and yeah. All right. She eats Laffy Taffy. That's the source. Told you there'd be some good jokes. Derek, are you ready? I've prolonged you enough, buddy.
Let's do it. All right. January 21st, 2013. Let's take us back. And Obama is being inaugurated for his second term. He's standing with his family, standing with his daughters. He's standing in front of Congress and all the world. And he places his hands on 2 books. Now, why these 2 books? Slide. These aren't encyclopedias. These aren't even our congressional laws. They're 2 books that our society has called sacred. And we use this sacredness for him to go through a ritual to explain that I take this job with the utmost seriousness. Sacredness is part of who we are. We touch, we interact. It changes our posture. It changes the way we behave. We fight for it. We debate over it. We push for sacredness, and it still stays with us. And it's part of the human expression so much that I'm even hesitant to say, what would we do with sacredness if we begin to digitize it? Would sacredness even hold up? When we think about sacred objects, sacred spaces, and sacred rituals, I'm asking this question, does sacredness exist in VR? And if so, how would we get there? Maybe we could look at how sacredness is established with the way we have values. Slide. When we think about a sacred object, it has a history, right? It has some type of story attached to it, how it was made, how it was constructed. And I always raise this question when we go into the digital, do we still create history with these objects? Do they still have a trace? Could we still tell stories with them? I spent some time when I was at MIT looking at photogrammetry and how we could accurately translate a historical object from a physical form to the digital. And all along while doing this process, and we put these into virtual environments and we can look at them and virtually touch them, we still raise the question, well, if this was a sacred object, does it still have that story? Or have I changed the story so abstracted that we can't even see the craftsmanship of the person who made it, or find what that other level is that makes us connect with objects? Perhaps sacredness will be achieved in the meaning of objects and how we establish meanings. For instance, those Bibles that Obama used weren't just any books. They were books of, he used Lincoln's Bible and he used Martin Luther King Jr.'s Bible, and he placed his hands on it. So the sacredness for these books, for the ceremonial act, was not just about the text, it was about who used the text and who read them. And when we switch to add text into virtual environments, will they still have a history? Can we still look at who read them, who had them, who interacted with them in the same way we've done before? And so I question this notion of what text leads us to a deep understanding of semiotics. Is it an icon, is it an index, or is it a symbol? And we know that with icons, we think of those as a physical representation of something. But if you move on the further end of the line, the symbol, which is construed as an abstract sign. So I raise this question, is a VR environment something that's a symbolic, or is this more of an index? What are we dealing with this? Perhaps we can look at rituals for sacredness in VR. With the rise of interactive spaces for social VR, it's only a matter of time before people appropriate these spaces for ritualistic acts. And even in doing so, sometimes we think of them as social, but sacredness could always manifest itself as a very individualistic, personal experience. It's something that I've been looking at, this ritual of even reading scripture. With the creation of Story Dive, we asked this question, looking at the ritual of reading a scripture, could it translate into a VR experience? But once we do that, and we can put this headset on and look at, for instance, the story of Moses, I question, have we taken the sacredness away from it? Or is this something else? Or is this just an addition? Sacredness maybe is about connectedness in VR. We touch objects. We use our hands to interact. And I question in a virtual environment, will the sacredness still translate for us to have this human connection with objects, with photos? And even on the subject of photos, I would argue for us to make virtual environments, maybe we need to revisit our physical examples of how we make monuments, and less like the things that I see with pop-up VR galleries. And thinking about the dead, well, I'll just leave this slide up here and let you ponder about Project Asylum's trying to digitize your lost ones so you could revisit them in VR. Maybe it's about how we establish memory. Maybe that will get us there for sacredness in VR. When you think about the visual experience, maybe it's about translating in an abstract way. I had the experience of creating this type of memory experience with Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "Fill Up the Jails" in Durham. And in this experiment, we virtually created the experience of seeing King preach this message. But all this work has led me to a final conclusion, that VR reenactments, is what I call them, VRRs, are not in themselves sacred, not because they lack authenticity, but because they lack abstraction. And maybe with abstraction, that's where we'll find some sacredness in VR. Thanks.
I'd tell you to drop the microphone, but I own that, so don't drop it. You can metaphorically drop it.
Hello.
Hi. So I love the work you're doing, first of all. I remember seeing Moses at the RTP VR meetup. And I just have a question. Now, when you're bringing the spirituality that...
Sacredness, not spirituality.
Sacredness, sorry. No, but your personal beliefs into the public, is that something that's difficult for you to do, especially with the way that people, sometimes get offended with that? And I'm just curious of how easy it is to bring your own beliefs, if you, apparently believe in this stuff, to VR and how people have responded to you.
Well, I think you're a little bit mistaken, because remember, I'm not talking about religion. I am not talking about spirituality. I'm talking about sacredness, which is a large, overarching thing. When we think about sacredness, yes, it might relate to connecting with a deity, or it might relate to connecting with some spiritual realm, but it also means connecting with memories, connecting with the past, connecting with your ancestors. So I love the notion of sacredness, because even though it is inclusive of some religious rituals, sacredness is such a larger topic. So it's not a question of debate whether you subscribe to sacredness. We all do. We all find something sacred, and that's why this subject, it's not that hard, because it's purely academic.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I just was wondering on a personal level if it was anything where people have attacked you for anything, because
I think everyone can find something that they relate to in this type of notion of what I call sacredness, whether it's the photo of a lost one of a family, the burial site of a loved one. Sacredness is a much broader subject than what most people want to quickly go into a religion.
My question. I saw the thing about the memories of the dead people and visiting them in virtual reality. Ethically, have you heard any, or first of all, how far along are we in that process? And secondly, ethically, has that been addressed, whether or not that's considered ethical by the experts? So
I've been following that project for some time now. It's really interesting how they're using full body scans to accurately get a avatar version of that loved one. I don't know about the ethics of that. I think from where I stand, it's that last slide where I'm saying, I personally believe our push towards sacredness will be through abstraction. And because that's where we find some rich methods of reflection and way to get at that space, rather than trying to do full reenactments or full scans of Martin Luther King, some historic moment in the Civil War or the World War I or World War II. All those historical moments we could recreate in VR. But I'm seeing in my research that it's through abstraction of these moments or these periods of time where people find the most moment of sacredness. And that's from anthropology looking at even different cultures, abstraction being used all the time when we talk about the sacred.
Let's squeeze one more in.
So I have a quick question. So when you think about sacredness, a lot of times it comes down to a sense of an object or an event or something that deserves respect. And my big question is, how much does fidelity figure into that? So when you show like the reenactment of that speech by Martin Luther King Jr., it looks like it wasn't very well rendered. You know, you could question like how high the fidelity was of that reenactment. Is the reason why abstraction is the way to go simply that we can't reach the high enough fidelity where we're actually doing, you know, good by these sacred objects or sacred moments?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure that it's the fidelity issue. I think even if we accurately, you know, going back to the photogrammetry of making a model, scanning some artifact, even if I accurately scan it and it's perfect, we can get it so it's 100% one-to-one of what that thing is, we're competing with the real thing. And so going back to that notion of to really get there, maybe we go through abstraction for the sacred and call that something else. So I would argue it's not just about fidelity. I think fundamentally the abstraction allows a level of sacredness more than the real thing. The names on the wall of the Vietnam War Memorial are names. It's an abstraction because it's a representation of the real soldier. So you connect with that thing and you don't have to connect directly in your face with that loved one. Thank you.
Well done, sir. Well worth the wait. Megan, are you ready? You don't know? I know. I don't even know what I'm doing up here anymore. Megan Lewis is a senior scientist at RTI International. She directs the Patient and Family Engagement Research Program in RTI's Center for Communication Science. Please help me welcome Megan to the stage. Enjoy. Good luck.
All right, this is how to advance it. That's advancing?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here tonight, and I'm going to share a little bit of different perspective on VR and some work we're doing across the Institute using VR in social science research and training. So here's my slide. You've seen it a few times already. And so one area that I work in is in doctor-patient communication. And so we know that doctors have a huge impact on people and what they say and what they do. But in the real world, I can't say, hey, doctor, you say one thing and you say something different to this other person. That wouldn't be ethical. But in a virtual world, I can do that. And I can study communication patterns and how people react to those patterns. And so this is the virtual doctor's office waiting room that we created with Chip at Tar Heel Technologies and John Holloway and Laura Wagner, who are all here tonight. And Amy is the genetic counselor that sits in this office. And I'm specifically interested in how doctors communicate about genetic sequencing information, because if you didn't know, you could go online right now and you could probably have your genome sequenced for not very much money. And so we don't know how people react to this information. We don't know how they process it. So we're using Amy, and we're embedding her in a virtual doctor's office, and we're studying patterns of communication and how they affect people and their reactions. So as I was starting to see how we could apply VR in this arena, some of my colleagues at RTI's Center Risk Assessment Group were looking at how they could use VR to study food safety. So this beautiful turkey here could be a horrible mess if it wasn't prepared properly. So what they're doing is they're taking 360 video, they're using Google Cardboard, somewhere in there, and they're training people how to enact food safety behaviors. So it's a kind of choose your adventure kind of thing. People are walking in a store and maybe they'll buy a thermometer or maybe they'll do something else. And as they go through this experience using 360 video, which you already learned about, they get feedback on how they're doing. Are they learning the right things? How do you use the thermometer? How do you unfreeze the turkey, and so on? So this is going to make their app more precise and more useful, which is really important because for foodborne illnesses, there's 48 million cases every single year. So if you can develop an app that will help people learn food safety behaviors more reliably, you've made a big impact. So these are two examples, and I want to share a couple more that I think are really cool about what's happening. And so we're really asking these what-if questions at RTI and how we can use VR across a variety of problems. So what if we built a virtual crime scene investigation unit. And that's what my colleagues in the Center of Forensic Science are doing. And they're in the process of building an app that's going to allow police, investigators, and others to train to collect evidence. And this is a real problem because we know if people don't collect evidence the right way, we have problems, there's justice problems, all kinds of things. And so by developing this app, they're going to be able to train police officers, investigators more reliably, more cost effectively, and you can distribute this kind of information to little police departments that don't have this technology and these capabilities. So as cool as I think is that RTI has its own CSI thing going on, there's some things that are a little bit cooler. So what if we took VR and we integrated VR technology with drones? So this is RTI's drone, flies around the campus on the weekend. And my colleague Joe Ironman, I don't know if Joe's here tonight, is integrating drone technology with VR technology with the specific goal of helping and empowering people with disabilities. So you have technologies that are developed for one problem and one use, and we're integrating and applying them to other uses to increase the social good. So by using VR and drones, you can give people with disabilities first-person perspective on environments that they may never have experience with and may limit their getting out into the world. And it also can help their caregivers who may say, oh gosh, I don't want someone to go and do this, and they can get experience being out in the world in different ways that they're not used to. So that's one other example. And I want to share with you one last example of how we're using VR in an example that's near and dear to my heart. So 68%. That's the percent of doctors who are uncomfortable having end-of-life discussion with their patients. So this is a huge problem, especially if we think about all of the older adults in our society as the population ages, as the baby boomers approach the end of their life. This is a time when these people need to rely on their doctors for this source of support and information, and their caregivers need this support as well. So what we're doing, and it's a project that we're just starting, we're taking immersive virtual reality and we're building an app that will help people, medical trainees in this example, have more experience in having these kinds of conversations in simulated contexts. And so we're doing this by increasing their motivation and empathy, and that's our goal. So that when they're going through medical school, they have these simulated kinds of experience because probably as medical trainees they wouldn't have them to start. And then we hope that when they get into the real world, they'll have more confidence, more empathy to have these kinds of conversations when they come up in the process of their clinical care. So I have a few more slides. So we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep asking what-if questions, how we can take this amazing technology that certainly isn't a panacea, but can be applied in many kinds of contexts. How can it be applied to helping clinicians be more sensitive to their transgendered patients? How can we help policymakers understand the devastating effects of climate change? And how can we transport students to places that they may never be able to go so they feel like they're part of a global community? And so we'll keep asking these what-if questions, how we can apply this amazing communication technology for the social good. And I'm really pleased that our CEO, Wayne Holden, who's shown here, shares our vision. And this is him using an Oculus Rift headset at the RTI Innovation Showcase, which is last month. And he's looking at our genetic counselor's office when he's in this headset. And what I was really pleased about in this Innovation Showcase is that we won an award for crossing boundaries. And it's not that we got the award that meant anything to me, but it's that we got it for crossing boundaries. And because if we're going to use VR to improve the social good, to apply it to the social and health problems that plague our society, we're really going to need to cross boundaries. We're going to need the intelligence and the experience of our developers and our engineers, the talents of our artists, and the hearts of our content experts to come together and work together to use this amazing technology. So my question to you is, what is your what-if question? How would you use VR? How would you apply your knowledge to use this amazing technology to improve the social good?
Couple questions. Who's got a cue?
Yes.
There you go.
So
TV and video games are blamed for desensitizing people, but you see virtual reality as a medium to sensitize people.
Exactly.
What do you think is responsible for that difference between the two mediums?
I think it's a great question. And so for example, I can talk about like in our genetic counselors study that we did where we had people come in and expose them to different patterns of information and look at their reactions. TV, video, they weren't gamers. They weren't used to playing video games, and they weren't used to even having the headset on. And so I think, there's a novelty to it. And getting back to one of the earlier presenters, what happens is when you put these headsets on, and if you haven't, I really encourage you to try it out there. I know there's going to be some demos. It changes your worldview. It really does. It makes you feel different. It makes you feel the sense of presence, the sense of connection that you don't just have playing a video game or watching TV. It's quite extraordinary. And it's really made me very passionate about how we use this for improving people's lives.
Time for one more. Going once, twice. All right.
So I can see the value in this in teaching people about dialogue and how you should respond to it. But I had a question about the training for the police CSI. How easy is it to create new scenarios and like detection methods? So like if some new research comes out of this, say you need to collect data this way, how easy is it for the police to put that into the software, or they're going to have to hire, virtual realists to create new software every month for them?
Yeah, so I think it's a really great question. And, John Holloway's here and he's working on that. He might be able to answer the more specifics of it. But I think what is really important about your question is the sustainability of this technology. Once we develop something, how do we make sure it's still relevant if we're going to use it for a training or research setting? How do we make sure that we're able to make sure that people have the most evidence-based approaches when we're doing that? And so those kinds of things are some of the things we're trying to work out. It's like, how do we maintain the library of this information? How do we update it? How do we integrate it? And then also disseminate it to these places that might be able to use it. So it's a very good question. I think these are things we're still working out. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. All right. You're pumped. I know you're ready. Let's do this. Uh-oh. Watch that. I don't sign a waiver. We're doing this. All right. Let me squeeze just one more in real quick. Just one more joke just before I bring you up. What does Charles Dickens keep in his spice rack? Not going to find this on Laffy Taffy. The best of times, the worst of times. I'll be here next month. All right. Michael McCulloch is a veteran video game marketer who has worked on a wide range of games where you shoot guns, learn to play the guitar, and win prizes in the Showcase Showdown. After stints in San Francisco and the south of France, Michael and his family are happy to call Raleigh their home for the last 4 years. Well, I guess come on down.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Wow, I got to follow 2 doctors. That's not fair. So the last time I was here, I talked about our work in social VR, and I wasn't allowed to talk about anything specific that I was working on. But today, I promise will be different. But let's start with this image. This is the assumption about VR, right? Got one headset, by yourself, block out the rest of the world, a very isolating experience. But we believe the opposite to be true, that VR has the potential to be the most social platform that we've ever seen. We've heard all these great speakers tonight, right? Talking about presence and being there. Well, imagine experiencing all these great things, museums, historical periods of time, the classroom, but with other people. And that's the thing that VR allows, is that when you're there and other people are also connected in the same environment, it really feels like you're there with other people. And that's something I'm going to talk about tonight. But okay. Hey! But we're not quite there yet. This is really year one of what I call the great social VR experiment. Now, I didn't say video games. This is a social VR experiment. And with experiments, there's a lot to learn. We don't have all the answers. People are going to do amazing things. People are going to do terrible things. And that's part of what we're going to learn. So what have we seen in this first year so far? Really basic stuff, right? Facebook shown that you can do Facebook things in VR. You can take selfies and share things and connect with friends, all the things you do in Facebook. Alt-Space VR is doing a lot of really interesting things, attend events, comedy shows. They're even talking about having a wedding in Alt-Space VR, but things are very basic. The avatars are very basic. The movement and the things you can do are still really basic. And then you got Oculus Toy Box and Sports Bar VR, which are exactly what they look like. Floating heads, floating hands, playing with toys and bar games. Now, the thing about all this is that right now, even with this basic technology, when you are in these experiences, you actually feel in some way like you're there with other people, and that's what's amazing. And we like to believe that what we're working on at Red Storm is going to, thank you, is going to take it to the next level with Werewolves Within and with Star Trek Bridge Crew. So I'll talk about Werewolves Within first. Werewolves Within launched in December, and we take one of the most basic social experiences of sitting around a campfire and asking people to lie to each other. Now, this game is based on classic social deduction games like Mafia or Werewolf, where everybody has a role, have limited information about each other, and they have to discuss as a group for an amount of time and decide who to vote to kill. It's great. And so, while it's a super small community right now in VR, we have seen behavior in this game like we've never seen before in any of our other games. It's amazing. And the retention and the immersion that we've achieved has been awesome. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got there. So one of the first things we learned is that intuitive social movements equal immersion. If you're in a social setting, you better be able to do the things that you would normally do in a social setting to feel like you're really there with other people. So first thing we did, full arm gestures. I'm very spoiled. All the games I play have full arms. The floating hands thing, it's hard for me to get into it because when you're really there and you feel like you're embodying the avatar and you see your arms moving, you really feel like you're in the environment and you see others doing the same thing. We also do voice-activated gestures. So when I'm talking really loud, my arms do the same thing that they're doing right now because I'm talking very impassioned and we have the avatars reflect that. Another basic thing, eye lock and lip sync. Just when you're talking to someone, it better look like you're making eye contact with them, not that they have dead eye or looking someone else. So we work a lot on eye lock, and when you're talking, your lips better move along with that. Same two other things that if you have secrets, you're gonna wanna whisper to someone. And in order to whisper to someone, you gotta lean over, they gotta lean back to you. We create a private VoIP channel so you can have a conversation that no one else can hear. And just like right now, I'm standing up, you're all being very quiet, thank you very much. That's what we do in the game. If you stand up, we track it, and you can tell you're standing up, and everybody else is muted for 10 seconds, and you have the floor to say whatever you want to the group. So these are just some very intuitive social things that make people feel like they're really there. Another thing, our theme reduced anxiety. We have a whimsical world. We have super stylized avatars. People love to take on the personality of these characters. In fact, one guy who was the bard pulled out a guitar and started playing a song, and everybody was singing along as they were playing the game. So people really took on these characters. But what was the most interesting is that from the very first times we demoed this, people who hated Mafia, hated Werewolf, because they're terrible liars. Their faces were always giving them away. Loved this game because they could reduce the social anxiety of these types of games, just focus on the strategy, just focus on the word said, and they didn't have that fear of lying to their friends and being found out. It's a very cool thing, and I think it touches on a lot of some of the stuff you were talking about, Megan. We also learned that people don't suck. If you're comfortable and you're immersed, well, you might actually be pretty nice. There's a lot of concern about are people just going to be mean in this game, they're going to ruin the games for others. It's not what we've seen at all. People want to help each other, they want to explain the rules, because in the end it's not about winning, it's about keeping playing the game with your friends, just like any other social game. So if you're comfortable, if you're immersed, if you're with people you like, you're going to stick around for a while. From the very beginning, we heard VR experiences need to be 20 to 30 minutes. That's all people can handle. They're going to get sweaty. They're going to get uncomfortable. They can't handle it. Ding. Over 30% of our players have play over an hour on average. We have 8-hour Twitch streams that you can watch. Our number one user has played over 300 hours in this game. So clearly, if you take care of the basic levels of comfort, people will stay in VR a lot longer than we're typically hearing. So what's next for us? We're excited to take all these learnings to Starfleet and bring people to a Federation starship in Star Trek Bridge Crew. What's going to be really cool is to see how people go from lying to each other around a campfire to dealing with stressful situations where they have to complete missions and the Klingons are shooting at them and their captain doesn't make a decision fast enough. How are they going to handle it? That's what we're really excited to see. But we don't know. We don't know how it's going to go because that's all part of this social VR experiment. We're really excited to see what happens next. Thank you very much.
Question? You're not going to ask if he needs any video testers, any game testers, right? All right. Can we clear the air? Are you hiring video game testers?
You can sign up at playtest.redstorm.com.
There you go.
All right. Well, first of all, I am a big gamer, but outside of that, you know, you have the visual aspect and the auditory aspect, but what about like the tangible, like feeling, like with your hands, smell, and everything else? Will that eventually, you think, come to play? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one thing that I was just talking with Mike about is that I got a chance to try The Void in New York City, the Ghostbusters experience, which you get a lot of those things. I mean, I was walking on what I thought was a shaky bridge at the top of a building in New York City, and I felt like, holy crap, this thing's gonna fall. At the very end, when you shoot the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it smells like burnt marshmallows in the room. It was so cool. And so yes, this is going there, absolutely. Now, can you have that in your house? Not for a while, not for a while. But these types of arcade experiences and destination VR experiences are absolutely gonna continue to grow.
One more. I saw your hand first. Take us home.
So this was based on the Werewolf Within card game, right? Loosely?
Loosely, yeah.
Yeah, because I played that a lot over Christmas.
Yeah.
And it's a great game. And when you talk about being able to use your hands, so what technology are you using? Are you using Rifts and Vives that have...
The game is on Rift 5 and PSVR.
With the touch controllers?
We do not use touch controllers. That's an interesting... So what we found is that with the social game, we created pre-rendered animations that you could choose from. So you could point at somebody, you could throw your hands up, you could do things like that. Because what we found is that when we started to explore with touch controllers, there's too many distracting things that could happen, and it would almost break some of the fantasy a little bit. I mean, with Star Trek, you can use the touch controllers because you're interacting with the panels, you're hitting buttons, you're in control of steering the ship. But with some of the social gestures, we actually found it to be a more comfortable experience and more believable when I looked across the way that some of these animations and gestures were pre-rendered.
Well, what's the latency between being able to point? I mean, if you're trying to do that in real time, how do you do it?
Well, that's the thing. So you just hit a button and there's no latency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
But even if, so we don't run into latency either with Star Trek. If you're pointing at the captain or something like that, it's happening real time.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic. Very interesting. Thank you, sir. I know you guys are probably ready for another beer to hang out. Just a few small little announcements. We do this every third Thursday. We'd love to see you back. Next month is going to be the best of RTP180 over the past 4 years, so hopefully we have some surprises up our sleeves you'll have to come back to see. There are a few stations outside to kind of test and hang out and, you know, do whatever in another world you want to do. I don't know. I think that's it. I know, that was a long pause for like a dramatic ending, but thank you all so much for coming. And hopefully we'll see you next month. Tonight was out of this world.